Red Bull makes a shocking statement. As huge upgrades are coming, Piastri has been advised on how to win the championship, and Ferrari is in danger of losing Leclerc. Let's get into the latest F1 news. What if I told you that Red Bull just figured out how to unlock their car's true potential with just 6 races left in the season? And Max Verstappen might actually have a shot at his 5th consecutive championship despite being 63 points behind? Stay with me because this engineering breakthrough is absolutely fascinating. Formula One in 2025 has been wild, and Red Bull's journey with their RB21 car perfectly captures why this sport is so unpredictable. For most of the season, Max Verstappen and his team were stuck in what can only be described as development hell. The 3-time world champion managed just 5 podiums in the first 14 races. 5 podiums. For a driver who's dominated the sport for years, that's practically a disaster. But here's where it gets interesting. Red Bull's chief engineer Paul Monahan just dropped some serious insights about what's been happening behind the scenes. The team has been on what he calls a journey to understand the complete behavior of their car. Think about that phrase for a moment. Complete behavior. It's not just about making the car faster in a straight line or better through corners. It's about understanding every single aspect of how the machine responds under different conditions. The transformation started becoming visible in recent races. Verstappen has won 2 of the last 4 Grands Prix, with 2 additional second-place finishes. That's championship-level consistency right there. But what's really remarkable is how this turnaround happened through what Monahan describes as a steady trickle of updates rather than one massive overhaul. Let's break down what Red Bull actually did. They've been methodically revising their floor design, engine cover, and front wing. Each change might seem small in isolation, but together, they're creating something much more significant. In Singapore, for example, they introduced an evolved front wing design that increases camber in certain sections to extract more downforce, while maintaining airflow stability. That's engineering precision at its finest. Singapore has traditionally been a weak circuit for Red Bull in recent seasons. Yet Verstappen qualified on the front row and finished second, only beaten by George Russell's brilliant drive for Mercedes. That's not coincidence. That's evidence that their upgrade path is actually working. Here's what makes this story so compelling from a technical perspective. Monahan explains that they're getting exactly what they expected from their simulations and research. That might not sound exciting, but in Formula One, correlation between what you predict in the wind tunnel and what actually happens on track is incredibly difficult to achieve. Red Bull has been struggling with this correlation for the past 2 years, so getting predictable results from their upgrades is actually a massive breakthrough. The engineer describes their recent improvements as a combination of many little changes rather than one big leap forward. He's honest about it too, saying the improvements aren't massive if you look at lap time in isolation, but over a 60-lap race, those tiny gains compound into something significant. Corner by corner, the improvements are really small, but they add up. What's fascinating is that Red Bull is still pushing development this late in the season. Most teams would have switched focus to their 2026 car by now, especially with revolutionary new regulations coming next year. But team boss Laurent Mekies explains their reasoning perfectly. They need to validate that their development tools and methodology are working correctly before they start designing next year's car with the same systems. It's a calculated risk. Every resource spent on the RB21 is a resource not going toward the 2026 project. But Mekies argues it's the right trade-off, because understanding whether their current approach actually produces performance gives them confidence for the winter development of next year's machine. Verstappen himself seems energized by these changes. He talks about how the last 3 weekends have been really solid, where they've just been fine-tuning rather than throwing setup changes left and right trying to make the car work. Any racing driver will tell you that having a stable platform you can predict and build upon is infinitely better than having a potentially faster car that behaves unpredictably. The Dutch driver describes the basis of the car as much more solid now. Some track layouts will suit them better than others, but having that solid foundation means they can approach each weekend with confidence rather than crossing their fingers and hoping their setup experiments work out. This brings us to the championship mathematics. 63 points behind, with 6 race weekends remaining sounds impossible, but in Formula One, momentum shifts can be dramatic. If Red Bull has truly solved their car's fundamental issues, and Verstappen can maintain this recent form, stranger things have happened in motorsport. What makes this story even more intriguing is the timing. Red Bull's breakthrough comes just as the sport is about to undergo massive regulatory changes for 2026. They're essentially perfecting a formula that will become obsolete in just a few months. Yet, as Makis explains, the knowledge and validation of their development process could be invaluable for tackling those new regulations. The RB21's journey from problematic machine to potential championship weapon perfectly illustrates why Formula One engineering is so captivating. It's not just about raw speed or innovative design. Sometimes it's about patience, methodical development, and the persistence to keep pushing when others might give up. Whether Verstappen can close that championship gap remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: Red Bull has transformed their season through pure engineering excellence. And that's exactly why we love this sport. What happens when Formula One's brightest star begins questioning his loyalty to motorsport's most iconic team? Charles Leclerc's manager just dropped a bombshell that could reshape the entire driver market landscape. The tension at Ferrari has reached a boiling point, and for the first time in years, we're witnessing cracks in what once seemed like an unbreakable partnership. This isn't just another contract negotiation story. This is about a generational talent potentially walking away from his childhood dream team. Let me paint the picture for you. Charles Leclerc arrived at Ferrari in 2019 as the golden boy, the chosen one who would restore the prancing horse to championship glory. The Monegasque driver had everything: speed, charisma, and that rare combination of raw talent and mental fortitude that separates the good from the great. Ferrari fans around the world believed they had found their next world champion. Fast forward to today, and that fairy tale narrative has taken a dramatic turn. After 6 seasons together, Leclerc has managed just 8 victories wearing the famous red overalls. His best championship result came in 2022 when he finished second behind Max Verstappen, but even that campaign was marred by strategic blunders and mechanical failures that cost him valuable points. The frustration has been building for months, but it all came to a head after the Singapore Grand Prix. Leclerc's post-race comments revealed a level of exasperation rarely seen from the usually diplomatic driver. He didn't mince words when describing Ferrari's current predicament, admitting they simply don't have the machinery to compete with the frontrunners. According to Leclerc, McLaren has maintained their performance advantage throughout the season, while Red Bull has taken significant steps forward since Monza. Mercedes has also elevated their game to match both McLaren and Red Bull. And where does that leave Ferrari? Fighting for scraps in what Leclerc described as feeling like passengers in their own cars. These weren't just throwaway comments from a frustrated driver. This was a calculated assessment from someone who has spent years studying every nuance of his competition. When a driver of Leclerc's caliber openly admits he feels powerless to extract more performance from his machine, it signals something far more serious than temporary disappointment. But here's where the story takes its most intriguing turn. Nicolas Todt, Leclerc's manager and son of former Ferrari team principal Jean Todt, recently sat down with Singapore's Straits Times newspaper during the Grand Prix weekend. His comments were nothing short of explosive, sending shockwaves through the paddock and giving us the clearest indication yet of Leclerc's mindset. Todt didn't dance around the subject. He positioned Leclerc alongside Max Verstappen as one of the finest talents of his generation, but then delivered the crucial caveat: Leclerc is no longer willing to accept mediocrity. The days of patient development and promises of future competitiveness may be coming to an end. The manager's words carried weight beyond their surface meaning. When he emphasized that Leclerc needs a winning car, he wasn't just stating the obvious. He was drawing a line in the sand, essentially putting Ferrari on notice that their star driver's patience has limits. This situation mirrors what we've seen with other top-tier drivers throughout Formula One history. Great drivers reach a point in their careers where they refuse to waste their prime years in uncompetitive machinery. Sebastian Vettel experienced this at Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton went through it at McLaren before joining Mercedes, and even Michael Schumacher faced similar crossroads earlier in his career. The timing couldn't be more significant. Formula One is preparing for a major regulation overhaul in 2026, which will fundamentally change how teams approach car development. This presents both an opportunity and a risk for Ferrari. They could emerge as the dominant force under the new rules, or they could find themselves even further behind their competitors. Todd acknowledged this uncertainty, expressing hope that the regulation changes will provide Ferrari with the platform they need to build a championship-contending car. However, hope isn't enough for a driver who has already dedicated 6 years of his career to the team without achieving his ultimate goal. The parallels to Max Verstappen's situation are particularly telling. The Dutch driver faced similar questions about his future with Red Bull Racing when their performance dipped, leading to speculation about potential moves to other teams. However, Verstappen's decision to honor his contract through the upcoming season demonstrates the calculated approach top drivers take when evaluating their options. Leclerc finds himself in an even more complex situation. His contract details remain largely private, but reports suggest he signed a multi-year extension in early 2024, with flexibility clauses for both parties. This type of arrangement is becoming increasingly common in modern Formula One, allowing drivers and teams to reassess their partnerships based on performance metrics and competitive positioning. The broader implications extend beyond just Leclerc's future. As Todt mentioned, the driver market could become incredibly volatile as multiple talents evaluate their options based on which teams emerge strongest under the new regulations. This creates a domino effect that could reshape the entire grid. Ferrari's response to this pressure will be crucial. The team has invested heavily in infrastructure improvements and personnel changes in recent years, but results on track haven't matched their off-track investments. The 2026 season represents their most important opportunity to prove they can still compete at the highest level. For Leclerc, the decision ultimately comes down to whether he believes Ferrari can provide him with championship-worthy machinery within a reasonable time frame. At 27 years old, he's entering what should be the prime years of his career. The window for achieving his Formula One dreams won't remain open indefinitely. The coming months will reveal whether this public pressure from Leclerc's camp will motivate Ferrari to accelerate their development programs, or if it represents the beginning of the end for one of Formula One's most storied driver-team partnerships. What if I told you that one of Formula One's brightest rising stars might be walking away from the best seat on the grid? The paddock is buzzing with rumors that could completely reshape the championship landscape, and the implications are absolutely massive. Oscar Piastri's name has been dominating headlines lately, but not for the reasons you might expect. Fresh reports suggest the young Australian sensation could be eyeing an exit from McLaren, despite being positioned to potentially become their next world champion. And honestly, the timing couldn't be more shocking. Let me paint you the picture of what's really going down behind the scenes. The drama all started unfolding after Singapore when things got heated between Piastri and his teammate Lando Norris. We're talking about a first-lap collision that had Piastri absolutely furious over the team radio, calling out what he saw as unfair treatment from both his teammate and the McLaren pit wall. The Australian wasn't holding back his frustration, making it crystal clear that he felt the team's approach wasn't exactly what you'd call supportive. Those radio messages sent shockwaves through the F1 community, and suddenly everyone started asking the same question: is Oscar Piastri happy at McLaren? Then came the bombshell report from Switzerland claiming Piastri is actively exploring options for 2027, with Ferrari supposedly in his sights. Now, on the surface, Ferrari sounds tempting. It's Ferrari, after all. But when you really break down the numbers and the timing, this potential move raises some serious eyebrows. Here's where things get really interesting. Former Haas team principal Günther Steiner, who knows a thing or two about driver politics and team dynamics, came out swinging against these exit rumors. His take? Piastri would be absolutely crazy to leave McLaren right now, and he's not shy about explaining exactly why. Steiner's argument is pretty compelling when you think about it. First off, he believes Piastri is genuinely positioned to win the championship this season. That's not just wishful thinking. It's based on the Australian's demonstrated ability to go wheel-to-wheel with Norris and come out on top when it matters most. But the championship potential is just the beginning. Formula One is about to undergo its biggest regulatory shakeup in years with the 2026 rule changes. These aren't minor tweaks we're talking about. We're looking at completely redesigned power units, revolutionary aerodynamics, and a total reset of the competitive order. It's the kind of change that can turn championship contenders into backmarkers overnight or elevate midfield teams to title-fighting status. McLaren has been positioning themselves brilliantly for this transition. While other teams have been focused on squeezing every last tenth out of their current cars, McLaren has already shifted significant resources toward their 2026 project. That's the kind of strategic thinking that often separates champions from also-rans when the rules change. Meanwhile, what's Ferrari's situation looking like? Sure, they could emerge as a powerhouse under the new regulations, but they could just as easily struggle with the transition. Plus, there's the small matter of their current driver lineup. Charles Leclerc isn't going anywhere, and Lewis Hamilton just arrived with a contract that probably keeps him in red until he decides to retire. Where exactly would Piastri fit into that equation? Steiner's perspective on the internal McLaren dynamics is particularly fascinating. He completely dismisses the conspiracy theories that have been floating around about Piastri being treated as a second-class citizen compared to Norris. His take is refreshingly straightforward. McLaren isn't putting Piastri at a disadvantage, they're just not handing him any artificial advantages either. Everything has to be earned on track. That approach might frustrate some fans who want to see their favorite driver get preferential treatment, but it's actually the hallmark of a healthy, competitive team environment. The best drivers thrive when they have to fight for everything they get, and Piastri has shown repeatedly that he can more than hold his own in those battles. The contract situation adds another layer of complexity to this whole saga. Piastri signed a multi-year extension with McLaren just months ago, and while the exact terms haven't been made public, industry insiders suggest it likely runs through at least 2027. That would mean any Ferrari move would require some seriously complicated negotiations. But here's what really makes this situation intriguing: the psychological warfare aspect. Sometimes these exit rumors aren't really about actually leaving. They're about sending a message, applying pressure, or positioning for better treatment within the current team. Piastri might be using the media speculation to ensure McLaren takes his concerns seriously and addresses any issues he has with their approach. The timing of these rumors is particularly telling. We're right in the thick of what could be McLaren's strongest championship challenge in years, and suddenly their rising star is linked with departure rumors? That's either incredibly poor timing or incredibly strategic timing, depending on your perspective. What makes Steiner's analysis so compelling is his outsider's perspective on the situation. He's not invested in McLaren's success or failure. He's not trying to protect any particular driver's interests, and he's not playing politics with the media. He's simply looking at the situation from a pure competitive standpoint and asking the most basic question: where would Piastri have a better chance of winning championships? The answer, at least according to Steiner, is nowhere. McLaren has the momentum, the resources, the technical expertise, and most importantly, they have a car that's capable of fighting for wins and championships right now. That's not something you walk away from lightly in Formula One, where competitive windows can close as quickly as they open. As this story continues to develop, one thing is becoming increasingly clear: Oscar Piastri holds all the cards here. Whether he stays or goes will ultimately depend on what he values most: immediate championship opportunities or long-term career positioning. Based on everything we've seen so far, the smart money says he's staying put. But in Formula One, you never know what surprises tomorrow might bring. What if I told you that one of Formula One's most successful team principals just walked away with a $100 million settlement after being treated like a criminal? This is the shocking story of Christian Horner's dramatic exit from Red Bull Racing, and why a legendary Formula One driver is now speaking out about the injustice of it all. The Formula One world was stunned in July when Christian Horner was suddenly dismissed from Red Bull Racing with immediate effect, right after the British Grand Prix. This wasn't just any team boss getting the boot. We're talking about the man who guided Red Bull through their most successful era, delivering multiple championships and establishing them as a dominant force in the sport. 20 years of dedication, and it all came crashing down in the most dramatic fashion possible. But here's where this story gets really interesting. Six-time Grand Prix winner Riccardo Patrese has broken his silence, and he's not holding back about how his friend was treated during this entire ordeal. Let me paint you the picture of what really happened to Horner during those final 18 months at Red Bull. It wasn't just about declining performance on track, though that certainly played a part. Horner found himself at the center of a media storm when allegations of inappropriate behavior from a fellow employee surfaced. The accusation sent shockwaves through the Formula One paddock and turned Horner's professional life into a public spectacle. Now, here's the crucial detail that many people overlooked during all the media frenzy. Horner denied every single accusation from day one. Not only that, but Red Bull conducted not one, but two separate internal investigations. Both times, Horner was completely cleared of any wrongdoing. Yet somehow, the damage was already done. Patrese, who finished runner-up in the 1992 World Championship with Williams, didn't mince words when describing what his friend endured. He called the entire situation fundamentally wrong and emphasized that Horner's private life should have remained exactly that, private. The veteran driver expressed genuine anger about how the whole saga was handled, stating bluntly that Horner was treated badly throughout the entire process. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. In September, news broke that Horner and Red Bull had reached a settlement agreement worth an estimated $100 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $100 million. This wasn't just a golden handshake. This was Red Bull essentially admitting that something had gone seriously wrong in how they handled the situation. The settlement comes with another intriguing condition that has the Formula One world buzzing with speculation. The agreement reportedly frees Horner to return to the sport before the second half of next year. This means we could potentially see one of the most successful team principals in recent history back on the grid sooner than anyone expected. Patrese's reaction to the settlement reveals the human side of this entire story. He openly admitted he's happy for his friend, not just because of the massive payout, but because it represents some form of justice after what he considers a terrible ordeal. The Italian driver painted a picture of a man who deserved better treatment and finally received some compensation for the damage done to his reputation and career. What makes this situation even more compelling is the speculation about where Horner might land next. Since his departure from Red Bull, his name has been linked with virtually every major team on the grid. Aston Martin, Alpine, and even Ferrari have all been mentioned as potential destinations. The Haas team principal recently confirmed that Horner had made an approach to them, showing that the former Red Bull boss is actively exploring his options. However, current reports suggest that Horner isn't in active discussions with any teams at the moment. His immediate focus appears to be on family time and taking a well-deserved break. Patrese mentioned seeing Horner riding his horses, painting a picture of a man trying to find some peace after a turbulent period. The irony of this entire situation isn't lost on Formula One observers. Here's a man who helped build Red Bull into a championship-winning machine, who guided drivers like Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen to multiple titles, and who became synonymous with the team's success. Yet his exit was marred by controversy and handled in a way that even his peers in the sport found unacceptable. Patrese's comments highlight something important about Horner's character and capabilities. Despite everything that happened, the veteran driver emphasized that Horner remains a very capable person who has a lot to offer Formula One. The question isn't whether he has the skills to succeed elsewhere, but whether he'll choose to return to the high-pressure environment of Formula One team management. The $100 million settlement raises questions about what really transpired behind closed doors at Red Bull. Such a massive payout suggests that the team recognized serious mistakes were made in how they handled the situation. It's essentially an admission that Horner deserved better treatment and compensation for the damage done. Looking ahead, the Formula One paddock will be watching closely to see where Horner surfaces next. His experience, track record, and proven ability to build championship-winning teams make him an attractive prospect for any organization looking to challenge the current hierarchy in the sport. The settlement money also gives him the financial freedom to be selective about his next move. What we're witnessing is the complex intersection of personal reputation, professional achievement, and corporate politics in modern Formula One. Horner's story serves as a reminder that even the most successful figures in the sport aren't immune to controversy and its consequences. But sometimes, justice comes in the form of a 9-figure settlement and the chance to start fresh. The Formula One debate that never gets old just got a major endorsement from one of the sport's most legendary figures. When Luca di Montezemolo speaks, people listen. And what he just said about Max Verstappen will send shockwaves through the racing world. Picture this scene. You're sitting in an exclusive London cinema watching a Ferrari documentary premiere. The panel discussion begins, and suddenly you hear the former Ferrari chairman deliver what might be the most definitive statement about modern Formula One talent anyone has made. This wasn't just praise. This was a declaration that could reshape how we view the current driver hierarchy. But before we dive into those explosive comments, let's establish why Di Montezemolo's opinion carries such weight. This isn't some armchair expert throwing around hot takes. We're talking about a man who transformed Ferrari into the powerhouse we know today. Under his leadership, the prancing horse dominated racing for decades, working with legends like Michael Schumacher during their golden era. When someone with that pedigree speaks about driver talent, the entire paddock stops to listen. The setting couldn't have been more perfect for such a moment. The Whiteley Cinema was hosting the debut of a new Ferrari documentary, and former Top Gear host Chris Harris was conducting what seemed like a routine panel discussion. Then came the question that would generate headlines across the motorsport world. Harris asked the simple yet loaded question that every Formula One fan debates endlessly. If Di Montezemolo were running a team today, which driver would he choose? Without missing a beat, the Ferrari legend delivered his verdict with the kind of conviction that only comes from decades of evaluating world-class talent. His response wasn't diplomatic or measured. It was absolute and unwavering, the kind of endorsement that instantly becomes quotable and sparks countless discussions in every corner of the racing community. What made this moment even more significant was the context surrounding it. We're currently witnessing one of the most competitive Formula One seasons in recent memory. The championship battle has been fierce, with multiple drivers showing exceptional skill under pressure. Yet despite all the talent on display, Di Montezemolo didn't hesitate to single out one particular driver as standing above the rest. His reasoning revealed the deep analytical mind that made him such a successful team principal. He didn't just focus on recent victories or championship statistics. Instead, he highlighted specific qualities that separate good drivers from truly exceptional ones. The ability to maintain control in difficult conditions, the consistency to avoid costly mistakes when pressure mounts, the raw speed that becomes evident even in challenging machinery. These observations take on extra significance when you consider the current competitive landscape. Formula One has evolved dramatically since Di Montezemolo's active years with Ferrari. The cars are more complex, the margins smaller, and the physical and mental demands on drivers have reached unprecedented levels. Yet his assessment suggests that certain fundamental qualities of greatness remain constant across eras. The timing of these comments adds another layer of intrigue. The championship fight remains mathematically alive, with multiple scenarios still possible depending on how the remaining races unfold. While one driver currently leads the standings by a significant margin, recent performances have shown that Formula One can deliver unexpected twists when least expected. What's particularly fascinating about Di Montezemolo's perspective is how it reflects broader debates within the sport. Fans and experts constantly argue about how to measure driver greatness. Is it raw speed? Championship tallies? The ability to extract maximum performance from inferior machinery? Or perhaps something more intangible, like the capacity to rise to occasions when everything is on the line? The Ferrari legend's comments suggest he values a combination of all these factors, but with special emphasis on mental strength and consistency. These qualities become crucial in Formula One's pressure cooker environment, where a single mistake can cost championships and careers. The drivers who reach the very top aren't just fast, they're mentally bulletproof when the stakes are highest. His assessment also carries weight because it comes from someone who has worked with multiple generations of Formula One talent. From the groundbreaking drivers of earlier decades to the modern era's technological masters, Di Montezemolo has observed how the sport and its demands have evolved. His perspective spans different regulatory periods, technological advances, and competitive philosophies. The immediate impact of these comments has already been felt across social media and motorsport journalism. Clips of the discussion have gone viral, generating passionate responses from fans who either celebrate or challenge the assessment. This kind of debate is exactly what makes Formula One so compelling beyond just the on-track action. Looking ahead, these endorsements could influence how we view the current generation of drivers and their place in Formula One history. When someone with Di Montezemolo's credentials makes such a definitive statement, it becomes part of the narrative that surrounds driver legacies. Years from now, historians examining this era will likely reference this moment as a significant endorsement from one of the sport's most respected figures. The discussion also highlights how Formula One continues to captivate figures who helped shape its golden eras. Despite stepping back from active involvement, Di Montezemolo clearly maintains his passion for identifying and appreciating exceptional talent. His willingness to make bold statements shows that the competitive fire that drove his Ferrari success remains as strong as ever. As the championship battle continues to unfold, these comments add an extra dimension to every race and every performance. The weight of such high-profile endorsement brings additional scrutiny, but it also represents the kind of recognition that validates years of dedication and development. So there you have it. When one of Formula One's most legendary figures speaks this definitively about current talent, it creates ripple effects throughout the sport. Whether you agree with his assessment or not, Di Montezemolo's comments have officially entered the conversation about greatness in modern Formula One. And in a sport where legacy matters as much as lap times, that might be the most valuable endorsement of all.